From the world in where she lives, she's got no fears or worries at all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air and the sunrise. She's walking on water. She's walking on water. Imagine waking up not knowing that today's your last one. Tell me what would you say if you had some? Somebody tell you that you're young but you're dying, which is weird cause you feel so alive. And she has a dream to be queen of the ocean, mad emotion, showing her devotion. On her surfboard, fully in motion, hoping for a miracle when the eyes first open. She wakes up and picks up a surfboard, heads out from the seashore, from the world where she lives. She's got no fears or worries at all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air and the sunrise. She's walking on water. She's walking on water. Face up, toes in the sand. Surfer girl gave up, trying to understand. My soul gets to live another time to die. She's tired of goodbyes cause they make her cry. Looking in the sky, blue as her eyes, watching the rising of the sun. Well, how time flies when you're outside and you're in love and you're having fun. Remember the early days when she was laying down on the sand with the fam, and she had a plan, fam, to wake up after daylight. Watch her eyes like the sun on the run from the night. Feels so alive when she wakes up and takes up a surfboard, heads out from the seashore, from the world where she lives. She's got no fears or worries at all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air and the sunrise. From the world where she lives. From the world where she lives. From the world where she lives.
Hey y'all, it's Wes Seiler here with Preserve Navarre Live. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Just did the intro there, so it seemed like the sound was coming in great, but let me know once you hear this. I'm very excited for tonight. We got a lot to talk about. I'm glad the weather is warming up this Thursday night, but can't wait to spend some time with you guys. We're going to talk about some of the local news. We'll talk in depth about the Holly Navarre water system results, what happened with that, some lessons learned from that I'm taking away. Love to hear your thoughts, any questions, criticisms, anything you got on there, let me know. Hearing that the sound is good, so that's great. Looks like people are joining in now. And, I love doing this show every Thursday night. It is a lot of fun. I'll put this comment down here so you can see all the comments that come through. Whenever y'all make them, I can see them at the same time. So love to have a back and forth on that. But I love doing this show every Thursday night. Love having guests on it. Love having the chance to talk to you live. Also love doing video clips of this afterwards, important points. And any and all questions are okay. So let me know what you're thinking as we go through it. So getting into the local news, we'll start there. There's some really exciting news. If you know about the Crew of Jesters, this is an amazing organization. They do lots of fun events. I've run into them a few times during Christmas with my kids. They do the Mardi Gras parade every year, and everybody's very excited about this year coming up because last year in February, they were planning on it and it got rained out. And so, this is a massive event for the entire county. Everybody comes out for it, thousands and thousands of people. Andy D's is going to be one of the prime spots for this. But all the different restaurants out there, I'm sure going to have stuff going on. And it's going to be a great time. Really hope the weather holds out. It has been, as everyone knows, incredibly cold the past few days. And I'm hoping it warms up some more. We've got a little bit better weather, as I was saying earlier today. But the Crew Jesters is going to have their Mardi Gras parade coming up. That's February 3rd, as you can see from their flyer. It'll be pretty much all day. That's going to be exciting. Hope to see you there. Let me know if you're going to that. And then I saw this in the local news that, of course, they're developing a new school system that's going to be on 98. So there's going to be a new school that's out there, and they're going to call it Soundside High School. So that's coming, I believe, in 2026 is what I was reading. So we're going to have that other school there. Probably going to cause some traffic issues along the way, as everybody knows 98 can be tough, but at the same time, they definitely need a new school, and I know a lot of folks are excited with all the kids and all the students that are in there. So any other big news you want to talk about, let me know, and we'll be happy to go through any of that. I do want to get into the results of the Holly Navarre water system board. So this was something that I ran for. I've done a couple of videos on Facebook, talked to a lot of friends about this, and of course we campaigned hard. We spent a couple weeks working pretty hard to get the word out about this election, and the results happened on Tuesday night. So if you hadn't heard, I know a lot of folks are just getting back into the rhythm and the swing of things after the holidays. That election occurred. We've put a candidate in this before. We had Mike Matthews was our choice last year, and he got it. He got about 280 votes, which was enough to get second place in it last year, which was exciting to us. And then this year I put in for it and was very excited to have a chance to do that, get the signatures and all that. I was overseas when we first kind of made that decision, and folks signed up and got me on the ballot for it. And I believe in the system. I think it's extremely important. Folks that talk to me know that I believe we already have a layer of government, and that's the water system. It has an enormous amount of power between them and the county. You've got a layer of government, and you saw that because this is an important election. You saw how people fought pretty hard. But Rob Lowe and Mark Miller took the top two spots, and you can see the votes there. I came in third place, and then Bill Thiel came in fourth. So those are the vote counts. What was interesting about this is you've seen a lot of proxies in the past, and a proxy is when you hand your vote to someone else to use it. That's been a source of controversy for the system. It was something that was up for an amendment, and we didn't see a lot of proxies this time around. We were expecting about 60 proxies or so, because that's what they had, I think, last year, and we didn't see that this time. I got a couple comments coming in that I'll bring up here. We didn't see a lot of proxies this time, only a handful, and I'll make this comment a little smaller. But we did see a decent turnout, and it was, I was standing outside. It was about 35 degrees, and I was out there with a couple of friends of mine, and just waving at people as they came by, and people were very animate one way or the other. I had people that would stop and say hi. I had people that were upset. They didn't like me because they know that I'm somebody who supports incorporation, and so they wanted to have a word with me or yell at me about that. But either way, they were voting, and that's the important thing. So the comment here says the election itself needs to be more publicized to get more people voting. It's on the bill, but did anybody need more people voting? I agree with that. I don't have the numbers from last year to compare that to this one, but believe it or not, having over 500 ballots is actually a decent turnout. But yes, we'd love to see more folks. I think with us, with me getting back from overseas and everything else, we didn't really ramp up our campaigning for it until about a week out, and did some door-to-door stuff. We put up a couple signs. I went around and talked to local businesses, so hopefully you saw the signs. But a lot of people don't know about the water system. A lot of people don't know questions about it. I've been to meetings before where, there's only like one or two people at the meeting. They had a budget workshop, and if you can't get off from work, for me, it can be tough to get from Hurlburt. Getting there in time for the meeting is tough, especially changing clothes and everything else and checking on the family. So this is a system that a lot of people don't know much about, and yet it's extremely important. System has access to, between its assets and its revenues and everything else, to over $80 million, and makes it a lot of the decisions in Navarre. So, they're the ones that are controlling, your tap fees, your water bills, all this stuff, and then employ quite a few number of folks. So it tends to be very powerful when it comes to local businesses. And if you ask the local business owners, those are the ones that are going to tell you all about it. So when there's an election that comes up for this kind of thing, you may not hear about it if you don't know. If you don't know that the system exists and where it's at. And then, of course, changing locations to Turkey Bluff Boulevard. That's their main office. but you pay a water bill, pretty, unless you have a well or whatever. Almost everybody is going to be paying a water bill here, whether you vote locally or not. Some military people, they vote elsewhere. You still got a water bill, and of course businesses do as well. So it's an important thing. But like I said, congrats to Rob and Mark. These guys get a 3-year term, so they'll be on there for a while. And then when it comes to the Articles of Incorporation Amendment, what this was, it was they have issues. They've had fundamental issues with their system for a long time, even legally. And one of those was their articles, which you put to have a business, and their bylaws, which is another document that shows you how to run your organization. Those two things didn't match up. There was language that contradicted itself. And so when I was coming up there last year and I was saying, hey, we need to make some changes. The proxy voting thing sounds very suspicious. All of them said, yep, we want to get rid of proxy voting, but we can't do it because, even though they were using it, we can't do it because there's a discrepancy. And so the attorney talked to them and they recommended, well, we'll put it up as an option for people. And then if they can rectify that discrepancy, then we could conceivably end proxy voting. But as you see, even with that, the yes votes and the no votes are there in terms of, do you actually want that? And people said no. You can see no bolded out there because 259 to 239, people said nope, keep it the way it is, keep the discrepancy, keep the proxy, so that stayed in place. So you have the current president, or the previous president at the time of the election, he was reelected, and then you have someone else in Rob elected as well. So that's how that played out. That's what you'll see if you go on their website. You'll see how this happened. You'll see exactly what the totals are. What I'm going to talk about is, first of all, some lessons that I have. What could I have done better? What could the team have done better? But also some of the behind the scenes stuff, because if you venture on social media, you might get one side of it, you might get the other. You might get people arguing. What's going on? And again, you got plenty of time with me tonight to ask questions, so we can go through that. Somebody on YouTube said 17,000 installations or homes, 558 voters. And yeah, that tends to be pretty common. It is a system that's below the surface. So, one of the reasons that I support incorporation is because I think we already have a layer of government. I think the decisions are already made in Navarre. You typically don't know about it. When it comes to a city vote, you have a mayor, you have a city council, they have to get out, they campaign, people know it, they expect it. When you don't have that, a lot of other organizations fill the gap of that power vacuum, the water system being chief among those, in my opinion. I would say the county is right there alongside them. And so you have elections like this that matter for the future, because I would do things a lot differently with this water system than what they've been doing over the past year. I would cut rates. I would look at some cost-saving measures. I would look for more grants, how their community is being run, like who is making those decisions. So we kind of exposed this because you saw, a lot of the volatility probably online about this, and so people were frustrated. But more people need to know. More people need to know about this system and what's going on. All right, we'll get to the next slide. So what I'm going to do is kind of show you kind of what's going on behind the scenes, or some of the things that you may have had questions about. Because I got texts throughout the day of hey, where do I vote? When do I vote? Who are these people out front? And then of course folks, oh man, I thought you were going to win. What happened? And the thing is, I learned this a long time, is when you succeed at something, you typically go to the next round. You succeed at something, okay, you move on, So if I had succeeded, I'd be immediately working with the staff and the CEO and the other board members. Okay, let's get to work, right? Let's start figuring out how to make this system run a little bit better. When you don't succeed at something, you take time to reflect and you learn and you listen to feedback, and you kind of figure out what happened and what can you do next time. So you learn a lot more typically in defeat than you do in success. And that's what I'm hoping has happened for me and for myself and a lot of the people that voted for me. What you saw in this system that was very interesting is a lot of the same people who voted and supported Mike Matthews, our candidate last year, turned and were completely against me. And you can see them saying, no to me. So kind of going after me and then supporting, the president of the board and another person that they wanted, right? And that was very different, because what happened with us a couple of years ago is we had a group of pro-incorporation people, anti-incorporation people who came together and said, there's problems with this system, and we may not agree on incorporation. We may not agree, on whether Navarre should be a town or a city or whatever, but we can at least set that aside and we can work together for the good of Navarre to hold this water system accountable, because the system has very little accountability embedded within it. Again, people don't know about it. Only a handful go to the meetings. Folks don't realize the power that it has. And the system itself is kind of between the private sector and between government, and gets the benefits of both without the accountability. And so we said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to work together. We're going to figure out, what's going on with the CEO who was doing all kinds of bids and stuff like that under the table, a lot of other shady things that is in the audit report. And we're going to figure out how to get him removed, right? And we work to get the truth out there together. And then we worked to get Mike Matthews elected, and Mike wanted transparency. He wanted the audit to occur to show what's going on. Now what you saw in this election is those folks turned against my candidacy, and they said, nope, we're good with the president. The same folks that brought in Dallas PV, we're going to bring in another guy. And then they accused me of having a hidden agenda. And we can talk about that tonight. They accused me of, I guess, saying if he gets on the board, then he'll, have a stage for incorporation, and that's all he's going to talk about, and he's not going to do any good for us. So that was their belief. And they did it well. You got to give props to them. They definitely turned out a lot of people, and those folks voted. And then on our end, we didn't turn out as many folks, and that's the end of the election. That's how that happened. So that was their messaging. It was coupled with attacks personally against me. So you saw these folks. They at one time had said, we're not going to do any personal attacks. We're not going to go after anybody. But then they kind of dropped that and then went after me personally. So you'll see a lot of stuff like this, a lot of, articles or pictures or things like that of me calling me a liar, saying he's dishonest. We can't stand this guy. He's terrible. Don't vote for him. And people who know me kind of laugh at this, and they're like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't describe him at all. But if you didn't know me, then you would think, that's the case. So that I'll kind of tell you guys what these actual, photos came from. The one in the top left that calls me a liar, that was when I was talking about Dallas PV has a record and it hasn't been shared with the board, and people in Navarre don't know. So that turned out to be true. It turned out that he was lying to the board, and the board fired him. They had a unanimous vote, and they removed Dallas PV from the water system based on us raising that concern. And then the news media started to pick up that story. They started to investigate themselves, and then that was brought to the attention of the water board. Those folks called me, and they said, hey, we're looking into this, and we'll let you know. So that video turned out to be true. So, obviously wasn't lying about that. There's another video there of me in uniform where they said that I was bad for our group. And then that third picture, I was in the parking lot of the dollar store on election day, and a news reporter came up to me and was filming me and everything else, and trying to get me in a gotcha moment and trying to scare people that are around with me, putting their phone in their face. And I said, hey, what do we have to do to get you to stop? Do we need a restraining order? What's going on here? Because you don't need to be up in people's face, chasing them around, including in a private establishment. Because I walked in to the store and asked, did you give permission for her to do this? And of course they said no, and they were on the verge of calling 911 to call the cops about that, to get her to leave. So that's a photo that I definitely stand behind, because I was trying to protect our folks. So but they went after me personally, so we dealt with that. But let me talk about what I actually stood for, right? What I wanted to see in the system, because even if I'm not on the board, there's still some things that we can fight for. We still care about this community. We still want to see good things. So, for folks who didn't get a chance to vote, and even if you did, here are some things that we can push the current board, because I hope that Rob and Mark and all the folks that are on the board continue to look, for ways to do these things. And we'll go through this. So the first one is clean water, right? We need clean water. Effluent gets dumped into the Sound every day. People got upset at me because they said, well, technically it's not the water system that does the dumping of that effluent. It's the county government through the beach system. And they said, oh, he's lying because of who does this. It really doesn't matter who's doing it. It's the fact that it's being done, and we have thousands and thousands of gallons of treated waste that's going into the sound. So all those chemicals and everything are being poured in. And this was the first video that I did talking about what I stand for. The water system has the opportunity to end this practice. They're building a system called the RIB system, which would allow this waste to be dumped on the Air Force Base. And that, to me, is a great idea. It's a great improvement. They've broken ground on it, but it's got a long way to go. And we've seen with Navarre Park and other projects where it can take many, many years and lots of delays if there's not accountability applied in this process to get the project done. So just because they've broken ground on the project doesn't mean it's going to be done tomorrow or next year or whatever, or meet its deadlines year to year, and it's got many. So the fact that they've broken ground on this project is a good sign, but it's not the end. So we need to push on this project and get it done as quickly as possible, and then figure out how do we continue to clean up the water that's had decades worth of effluent poured into it. So that needs to be a priority. Clean management. I talked about this a lot. What we want to see is management that looks for every possible revenue stream to run the system. One of the disagreements that I had with the president of the board who was reelected is he said, we just take the expense sheet and then we'll raise the rates. And he really had no issues about rates being increased. And this to me was fascinating. Like I really had a hard time getting my mind around it, because so many of the people who are against incorporation, these folks say that they hate higher taxes, right? And that's why they come after us as a group, is they say, oh, you're a liberal, you're not a conservative because you support higher taxes, because that's one of the revenue sources that a town has to have in order to function well or do a lot of services. You need some level. Of course, our goal is to keep it as low as possible and use other sources. But they say you're a terrible person because you support higher taxes. But whenever the water system raises its rate, there's nothing there. It's totally fine, right? And I had numerous anti-incorporation people talk to me, message me, and say, you need to just get off the back of the water system. Let them raise rates anytime they need. We don't need to know anything about where this is going or the staff and all that stuff. Raise rates is totally fine. It was very surprising to me to see so many anti-incorporation people say we're against higher taxes unless it's the water system. The water system has a government monopoly that brings its business. You can't compete with it. And so when they have the ability to raise rates without any type of accountability, they can do this year to year. So if you want to see a government-fueled entity raising your taxes, look at the water system. And yet the anti-incorporation people said, no, we're fine with that. We're totally fine with that, and that's fine. And the board itself kind of rammed that budget through that morning, and it was done. Right? This is a problem in terms of how we're managing the system. We shouldn't be just kind of raising rates whenever we need to, and we owe people more information. They make a statement saying, it's private information what's going on. You don't have a right to know what people are paid. You don't have the right to know how the system really runs. Submit your questions in the form of an email, and maybe we'll get back to you, right? That's not how a system should run. When it's the members, we're the ones paying the bills. It's our money that is entrusted to the system. And so if we have questions, we should be able to get those, especially when they concern us paying more money. So I would not manage the system that way. When you go into the system, you go to a meeting, I would really change things up a little bit and make it more customer focused and take people's input a little bit more and look for them for ideas. A lot of times we feel like we're having to go at that podium and beg people to take us seriously, or we're having to argue very hard to get very basic information. An example of that was the election day, where again they did the budget approval in the morning. I personally would have given more time for citizen input. I personally would have allowed us to have that discussion, not at 7 in the morning when everybody's going to work, but in the evening when you're going to have more citizens there. Because maybe there are citizens that know how to run that budget better. Maybe there's people that are very good at writing grants and things like that who could, if you bring them into the process, have the potential to help you out with that. So I would do a lot of those things differently in terms of how they manage the system. And then lower water bills. I think if you do that, if you're very efficient with the system, you can get lower water bills. One of the things that I would like to see, and maybe they have the chance to do that, is to bring in a restaurant. Bring in a restaurant into Hidden Creek. If you know where this is, it's right off PGA Boulevard. They have a golf course there. It's a spray-filled for some of the effluent, but they use it as a golf course. And people get to play on it and everything else. And they're starting to have events there. They didn't have events there for a very long time, but now they're starting to have the occasional wedding. I would look at bringing a restaurant in there, and I think they can still do this. They should do it out in the open. They should have bids. They should let people compete fairly, but bringing a restaurant to that golf course, because then it can generate some more revenue for you, and then push really hard to have more events there. Because again, if you're doing that, it's in a lively system, it's bringing in revenue, you're generating money from that as well, then you can preserve that golf course, which I think is a great thing. And you could then conceivably lower the water bills if you're bringing in a lot more revenue and using that efficiently. So lots of thoughts that I had, and yet people were saying, oh, he's got a hidden agenda. He's got a hidden agenda, and his agenda is incorporation. Well, this was my agenda. I was very clear about that. Of course, I support incorporation, but I'm the type of person that I focus on what I need to focus on and what my job is, and I'm not being competing for the water board because that would ensure the city or create the city. That's a whole separate vote. What I'm doing is trying to do these things, and the irony in this is that so many people said, hey, listen, if you care about Navarre, if you want to do good things, then a great place to start is the water system as opposed to incorporation. And of course, when I do that, they say I have a hidden agenda. But that was my agenda. I wanted to work on the ribs harder. I wanted to clean up some of the practices and make it more customer focused, do everything I could to help bring in a restaurant, and then try to lower water bills and think a little bit differently. If we can figure out a way to not have a rate increase, if we can cut some costs and things like that, then we're not having to effectively raise taxes. But people didn't want to see that. They didn't want to focus on the policy. They didn't want to have those discussions. They didn't want to talk about, what they wanted to do was talk about me and attack me the entire time. So very tough. But, it's encouraging as well. It's encouraging because there are people who saw through it. Obviously not enough to win a seat, but this is how you overcome dirty politics, is when a group of folks decides, we're going to just make the entire race about Wes, and everything that he ever says is dishonest. If he ever makes a mistake, if he ever puts something in his flyer that could have been worded better or whatever, then that's a lie. Anytime we ever find him saying anything that we disagree with or that we find untrue, immediately go to his motive is to lie and deceive, right? So they wanted to make the entire campaign about that, and then of course give no credit to anything positive that I said or anything that I've done to try to be helpful. So that was the campaign, personal attacks, the whole thing, intimidate and scare people who happen to agree with me. But then you see people like this. I still see these interactions coming through of folks standing up to it. And there was a lot of this, including from even people who, didn't vote for me. They just said, I don't know what exactly what he stands for. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. But you shouldn't be treating a person like this. You should be focusing on the issues, right? And you overcome dirty politics with people like Rich, who stood up and said, hold on a second, there is truth to this. I've read the audit report, right? Like there is a whole lot there. It is not just a normal audit. That's awful what's happened. The CEO was doing all kinds of terrible things. I'm glad we've made that change. And then he's trying to do something good for the community, right? And you guys are constantly focused on him with negativity. So calling it out for what it is. And I had so many people who said, especially local business owners, who said, I'd love to support you, but I'm scared to because of the backlash. It's not because I disagree with you. It's because I know if I associate myself with you, then people are going to come at me for my opinion and text me in the middle of the night and try to scare me and everything else. But there's people who stood up to that. And I'm so grateful to those folks who saw through it and appreciate you guys. But that's what it takes. I think that we should have elections that are focused on the issues, and I have a lot of patience for folks who want to talk about that. So, in this case, and I'll kind of break it down for you so you can kind of see this, this gentleman, Earl, is saying that, hey, when are you going to publicly admit that your campaign has been running a blatant lie about high Navarre water system dumping effluent into the Sound, right? So the truth is, as I told you, that effluent is being dumped into the Sound. And then it's the county that is doing that effectively because it's their government, the same government that gives water system its contract, but it's their government through their system on the beach that's dumping that. And so they're pointing out the fact that on one of my flyers it says it's High Navarre waste system dumping it, when that's not inaccurate because it's the county. And when I saw this critique, I said, let me look into that. Let me call and make sure that I got my facts straight. Found out, I talked to the CEO of the water system, talked to several board members. And they said, yeah, technically it's the county that's doing it. And I said, listen, guys, I am sorry. My entire point in writing that was to say, hey, the RIPS project is solving this, and I want to be part of it. And the CEO and the board members and several of the staff members said, we got it. No apology necessary. They told me, totally understand you're focused on the RIPS. And I said, cool, we got it. So I made that apology to make sure that they understood, that I wasn't coming after them. But this was in the middle of the campaign, and they said, we're good. And I said, great, I'm good, right? But what they want to do is say, hey, because you had to make some kind of change to your material, because you had to clarify something or apologize to the system, now you're a liar. Now we're going to come after you, and we're going to use that against you, as opposed to let's talk about the RIPS project and how we can get this done quickly. So that's me working through, the dirty politics of the campaign. What I'd like to see is to see races that are fair. And to give you an idea of this, is at no point was I, doing the same thing to other businesses. If a business wanted to put up a sign, I was told to do it. And a couple of them did. They put up knowing signs, and I said, cool, good on you guys. I'm not going to track you down. I'm not going to intimidate you. I'm not going to come scare you. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to receive, punishment from me, simply because you disagree. And the same thing with the candidates. We can focus on the issues, but I'm not going to call you names and things like that. So I hope that we continue to fight for clean elections and continue to focus on the issues. And I think in the long run, more and more people will see it. So talking about the future, in terms of where we go from here, I kind of already mentioned it, is that, the things that we got to do is we've got to make sure that people know exactly what we're trying to do. If they think that we have a hidden agenda, if they think that we're terrible people, then we have to sit and talk with them and say, here's what our agenda is. Because our entire agenda, whether it's the water system, whether it's incorporation, whether it's us doing charity events or socials, our entire group exists to serve Navarre. Our entire group exists to benefit Navarre. The agenda, if you look at our values, the entire thing is to be of service, is to help. We believe, among many things, that a town would be a good thing for the community, which is why we push for it. People say, oh, you're looking for a job. You're looking for a job. And they got mad at me and said, I can't believe he's trying to get on the water system. Well, I already have a job, and the water system isn't a job, and the board position is unpaid. But they said, well, you said, you guys said that you would never be on the city council, or that you would never be a mayor or a city employee, and now you're going back on that promise. Well, we're not. We're not. Our entire group exists to be able to benefit the community, and we're going to try to put people in positions to do that. What we're not going to do is use the city to benefit us. We're not going to create the city so that we can have a job. If you need a job, find it some other place, because that would be disingenuous. But I had people messaging me saying, oh, look, he's a liar because he said they never run for anything, and now they're running for something, right? When I said, listen, then you fundamentally didn't understand what the promise was. The promise was, we are not going to create a city and then ourselves run for it, because then we'd be creating our own job. When it comes to the water system, you've got to earn that. It's not something that we're creating. The water system already exists. We're simply trying to make it better. And we're going to have a say in what the city does in an effort to hold it accountable. So they fundamentally don't understand, what our group is trying to do, which again is to serve the community. So we're going to have those conversations. Not everybody's going to agree, but we can sit and talk with the people who did. And I had some people say, hey, I'm going to take you out for breakfast or lunch, and let's talk about this. Here's what I'm hearing. What's the truth? And that's more of what we've got to do. But what you ultimately see, and I hope more people are starting to pay attention to, is that Navarre has a layer of government. People say, oh, Wes is trying to create another layer of government, that his entire group wants to create something, and they believe that right now we live in terms of local government, that we live in freedom, and that now there's going to be a government where there wasn't any. That's what they believe, okay? And so then they see us trying to create a government where there's not one. What we believe is that the water system and the county fill that space because there isn't a city government. And so the water system tends to control the fees on businesses. The county makes decisions. People go up to Milton to be able to get their licenses and so forth. And so that vacuum created by not having a city government is filled by the governments and the entities that exist. The water system relies on the county government for its model. It relies on its lifetime government contract to exist. And so it's empowered by the county government to do what it does. And so that government already exists. So it's not a lie to say, hey, it's not another layer of government, because that layer of government already exists. And you saw people fight for it because they knew how important it was, right? They knew how important it was, and they were worried about us getting in there, because then if we start to do good things, then people are going to realize that we're not the liars and frauds and socialists and everything else that they've called us, and they can't have that. But the other thing that concerns me is, because that layer of government is fully intact, you can expect more rate increases, because they're going to just do that based upon what the expenses happen to be. Now, if they can lower some expenses, you might not get it, but that would be my concern. Let's do what we can to ensure this board does not raise rates again next year unless they absolutely have to. That's something that we can do on. And even as someone who's not on the board, if that happens and they figure out a better model to do this, then that's great. I'll be the first one to applaud them and say, great job, guys. You did what I hoped to do by running. I think that's important. That's important for us to put the community and Navarre above ourselves. So I'll be the first one to continue to try to support this system, to be as transparent as possible, to be as accountable to the folks as possible, regardless of whether I'm in the board or not. I'm going to continue as a member, as a citizen, to do that, and I hope you guys do too. So that's where we go. That's where our team is going. I'm grateful for you guys logging in and taking a look at the show. Let me know what topics you want to cover every Thursday night. Things you can do. You can look at joining the group, going to preservenavarre.com. Reach out to us. We'd love to spend time with you, take you out to eat, talk to you about it. We want to support the local businesses. We want more ideas on how to be involved in the community in a positive way. Looking forward to what we mentioned earlier about some events coming up, including the Mardi Gras Parade. We'll be there, and we'll be doing this show every Thursday night. So y'all have a blessed day. Have a great Thursday night, and we'll see you next week.